All right, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you're at in our great country and in this world. We hope that all of you will share this with your friends, get people on, and welcome to another episode of CoffeeWithJeremy.tv. As you may know or may not know, CoffeeWithJeremy.tv is all about spreading the word of collaboration, talking about what our clients are doing with collaboration from an S&G Endeavors perspective, and even checking in with some of our partners and small businesses that are using collaboration to take their work to the next level. I'm really excited to be joined today by Ryan and Kimberly, and I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves in just a moment. But Ryan is the operations coordinator for the Global Engagement Network, which is one of our clients that John and I are working with on strategic planning and structural planning. And Ryan, I'll allow you to tell us a little bit more about the Global Engagement Network in just a sec. And then we're excited to have you back, Kimberly. As you guys may remember from March, Kimberly was on CoffeeWithJeremy.tv and was talking about some of the collaborative work that her and I have done together in the past, and some of her own collaborative work that she's doing as a consultant. And Kimberly, my understanding is you've had 2 or 3 workshops thus far where you're really starting to get the word about collaboration and what you do out into the community. And so we're excited that you're joining us for that as well. So let me just give, Ryan, why don't you go first? Give us just a quick overview of who you are and what GEN, or Global Engagement Network, is.
Sure. My name's Ryan Hlavacek. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm working with the Global Engagement Network right now. We are a group of volunteers that are working to end the age of passive media consumption and really build an interactive network where viewers have just as much say in content as anyone working with us. We're at a critical time politically where the mainstream media is really dictating to a lot of people what to think and how to vote, and we want to bring that conversation back to the people and give them a platform to, again, not just be consumers, but to be creators of media and to be part of that conversation.
Excellent. And we've been doing some collaborative work with Ryan and his crew over at GEN. I will say GEN is something that was created by a guy named John Ellis, and we hope to have John on later this year once we get more further into your guys' strategic planning process. So Ryan, I'm glad you could join us. Kimberly, back from Shifting Patterns Consulting. Remind us what Shifting Patterns Consulting does, and tell us a little bit about you.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you so much for having me back this afternoon. I'm really happy to be here. So Shifting Patterns Consulting is a consulting firm that facilitates social change, and essentially what we do is we help changemaker leaders collaborate more effectively. And so a big part of the work that we're doing is by facilitating workshops for changemakers in the Washington, D.C. area, and next week we'll be in New York on June 1st at Impact Hub New York City to do a workshop there on how to build connection and engagement for collaborative action.
Excellent, and we're going to get more into those workshops in just a minute. So I thought what we would do, because I kind of, if you will, married Kimberly and Ryan based on the topic. And the topic for today was really framed as building organizations from the ground up, building collaborative movements from the ground up, excuse me. And so, you know, Kimberly, you've got a lot of experience really looking at movement building and how do you work with the different clients that you're working on. And Ryan, I want to talk a little bit more about how you guys have been working at GEN to grow your movement and to build that movement. Let's start with you, Kimberly. When I say building collaborative movements from ground up, what does that really, like, what does that mean to you? What does that make you think of even in some of the work that you've done with your clients?
Thanks, Jeremy. That's a great question. So in terms of building collaborative movements, so for me, a movement is really about a group of people who come together that are interested in advancing a particular cause, and that could be something like addressing climate change. It could be addressing, trying to engage more people in democracy, similar to what Ryan is doing, or it could be addressing economic inequality. And so it's really important for people to be able to come together and be able to work together more effectively to advance their goals, because these kinds of issues, the kinds of issues that movements address, are much bigger than one person or even one organization can address by themselves. And it's really important to be able to work together. And so in my work, what I found is one of the biggest challenges that a lot of these organizations and people face is that they struggle with the relationship aspect of collaboration. And so for them, it's difficult in some instances to figure out what the purpose is of the work that they're doing, because sometimes there's this hesitancy to rush straight into action. In other times, it's difficult to try to get everyone who's affected by the issue into the same room and on the same page, trying to work together and move in the same direction. In other instances, it's really about trying to help people step up more and fully participate and keep their participation going over the longer term. And so really that's what my business focuses on, is helping to address people that want to collaborate more effectively, whether they're establishing a new collaboration or continuing to build and strengthen an existing collaboration. It's helping them to address these kinds of challenges.
Excellent, Kimberly. And I will tell you, one of the things that I think has been really interesting about working with you guys at the Global Engagement Network, Ryan, is really the Global Engagement Network was spawned by an idea that John Ellis had, and he's been working to engage you guys as volunteers in that. And so what we have is we don't have a staff situation where people are, hired per se, and they are reviewed and they're having to report up, and their job security depends on how they're doing. It's more of that volunteer-driven network. I know you guys are working on going through a more engaging strategic planning and structural process, but as you think about it from your perspective, what does working collaboratively in your movement look like, Brian, to you? Like, what are some of the things that you've noticed even as we've begun to work on helping you guys temporarily morph into that type of collaborative structure as a team?
Sure. The really unique thing about us is that we are scattered all across the country, and it gives us a really unique insight as to different things going on in different parts of the country, whereas if you are a centrally located organization, you're really limited to kind of local experiences. The thing with us being all volunteer is sort of a blessing too, because there is a lot of motivation. There's people from all walks of life, and so it makes the collaboration process challenging but really interesting and really rewarding to do some of the things that we've done already with a scattered staff, if you will, of volunteers.
Excellent. I know that, so Kimberly, you had talked about the issue that you see is really, it's around building, how did you describe that?
Yeah, I talked about the relationship aspect. So you and I as organization development consultants know that the human systems is really what makes any kind of work challenging, whether it's collaboration or it's something else. And so really what my business focuses on is how do you build the relationships that can lead to better collaboration, because that seems to be what trips up a lot of people, especially what I found. Is like most people understand what collaboration is. They pretty much know how to do it, but what really hangs them up is the people aspect of it. Is like, how do we all get along? How do we all get on the same page? How do we trust each other? And how do we hold each other accountable for achieving collective results?
What are some of the things, Kimberly, that you've used with your clients to kind of help them build that trust? And Ryan, while she's talking about that, I really want to have you almost think about what are some of the things that you guys have done even internally to begin to build that trust with each other. I know that's something we've talked about. So Kimberly, what's some things you've done to help build that trust?
Sure. Well, really what it comes down to is a big part of it is for people to really get to know each other better and to understand each other's point of view, because I think that's a key element of trust. It's hard to trust someone that you really don't know. And then, so I think part of that can be just physically meeting, especially if you're based virtually, you're kind of spread out. I think it's important to be able to be face-to-face and to have that one-on-one face-to-face interaction, because nothing can really replace that. And then I think another part of that is helping people to communicate in a way where there's clear communication. And that's also important as well, to make sure that there's less likelihood of misunderstandings happening, because that can also affect trust. So basically helping people to sort of communicate in a way that's straight, that's clean, where there's less likelihood for misinterpretation or for people to jump to the wrong conclusions. I think that's another important element of trust. And I think just having people, be able to be around each other and get to know each other, I think is also really important.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ryan, I know one of the challenges has been all of you guys are volunteers. You guys are kind of coming into this network and really, kind of being thrown together and saying, make it. What are some of the things, I know, like I said, S&G Endeavors is really helping these guys with strategic planning, but we have been helping you guys with some of that internal structural development and stuff like that. What are some of the things that you've noticed we've used either in the process or that you guys are using within the network to help build that trust?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate what Kimberly was saying, the communications is so important, and one of the things I think you guys have brought to the table is making sure that everyone has a platform to speak on and share what they're thinking and what they're feeling about what's going on in the organization. And when people know that their voice is being heard the same as everyone else's, that's a really good first step to developing that trust, even if we are spread out across the country.
Yeah, I do know you guys, one of the things that they've been doing too, Kimberly, is when they do have, for example, their team meetings, they're doing those all via Google Chat so that they can see each other in those meetings. And so I think Kimberly's point about the in-person is ideal. If I had the budget to be able to fly everybody to a central place in the country for the Global Engagement Network for 2 days, that would be amazing to be able to do. But I do think one of the things that we're seeing in our work is that the engaged change process that John and I have talked about for helping organizations go through the strategic planning, it does create that video interaction. So you just have to be aware of what Kimberly's talking about, and sometimes that means you've got to take a step back, as we did with the Global Engagement Network at a staff meeting recently, and we said, hey, let's check in at the beginning of the meeting. How's everybody feeling right now about the work that we're doing here at Gen? And then when we got to the end of the meeting, we were able to kind of circle back to that and say, now give us one word for how you're feeling right now. And even in those two evaluation points, we were able to see that we had structured the conversation in a way that increased people's engagement and satisfaction with the communication and different things that they put into place. Kimberly, one of my learnings by going through this work with Global Engagement Network that I thought was really interesting as I was thinking about this call, they're going through this strategy, structure, planning process. So it's more long-term strategy and structure, kind of like what we were looking at maybe taking that one DC organization through. Sure. And so what became really apparent is this is a group of volunteers that are just starting up. So to leave them with no structure in place at all during the strategy structural planning process was creating these communication pieces and so forth. And I just wondered, like working, I don't know if you've got any of the direct engagement on trying to really start the collaborative or the movement from scratch. And really looking at that. But that was a huge learning for me, that we had to actually take a step back with them, help them put a temporary structure into place so that they had that structure to get through the day-to-day pieces, if you will. And when we did that, we engaged the design team as part of that process. So Ryan, I'll come to you to talk about what that has been like going through that temporary structural development. But Kimberly, have you saw that in the work that you're doing as well, where you had to almost take that extra step for temporary sake?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think that's a valid point about having some sort of structure in place, even if it's something loose and informal, just as a way to kind of keep the momentum going, especially when you're working with volunteers, because I understand as volunteers, You know, oftentimes you have other commitments, you have other priorities, and it's hard to sustain that momentum without some sort of a structure. However, what I found in my work, especially when working with newer types of networks or movements, is that really before we can even talk about structure, a lot of times we really got to talk about purpose. That's the issue that I found that really needs to be addressed, you know, pretty much right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you might have experienced this too, Jeremy, where a lot of times people come together and they've got great ideas and there's all this enthusiasm, and the first thing they want to talk about is what are we going to do together? When in fact, really what they should be talking about is why am I here? Why are all of us here? What's our purpose? Like, what's our purpose for being here? What do we actually want to achieve together, as opposed to just going straight into action? Because I found that a lot of times there's this temptation to just go and start doing things and doing activities, when that ends up tripping you up over the longer term, because at some point you're kind of wondering, okay, what are we doing? And what impact are we having? And without being able to connect that back to a purpose, it's really hard to keep moving forward.
And Kimberly's making a good point. That's why, Ryan, I was so hesitant to get into the temporary structural piece, because the way we designed it, Kimberly, they get their strategy first, and then they go have the structured conversation. So I'm curious, because what Kimberly is suggesting as far as focusing first on the purpose and why we're here, we actually did have to go have some of that conversation to put even the temporary structure in place, Kimberly. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Ryan, what has that been like for you guys as far as going through, kind of starting with, so far you've held a design team meeting where we talked about your strategy pieces a little bit, and then we started on this temporary structure. You know, what's that been like going through that process, and what are some of the things that you guys have solved from your perspective?
Sure. We did start with the design meeting setting, and that was going really well. I think a couple exercises that you had us do, Jeremy, were specifically designed to figure out what that purpose was and see what the vision we all had, and you know, thinking about it from a where are we at in 5 years sort of way. Going back though and taking that step back and setting up an internal structure, I think with the setting that we have where we are all spread up, where we all are volunteers, what that structure has allowed us to do, even just the first couple weeks, is really streamline and be more efficient with our resources, which are people and time right now. So by setting up that structure, we were able to focus our energy a little bit more and really dive into some tasks and projects that are going to move us along. So I am enjoying both of them. I can see where they're interwoven. I can see where they're separate, but they're both interesting and different processes, and when they do converge down the road, it's going to be really exciting for me.
Yeah, I think that's actually been one of the interesting parts for me, Kimberly, is I've got the experience of like helping the organization establish itself, but I've never been in a position where we really had to temporarily put something in place first to get them through that day-to-day part of the planning process. And so that's been really neat, just kind of looking at that. And I love that you brought it back to purpose, because that was, I remember when we first started that with your group, Ryan, everybody's like, well, let's talk about the structure first. And I'm like, no, we have to talk about why you're here first and what we're trying to accomplish with that. So recognizing I've only got about 9 to 10 minutes left, Kimberly, I want to circle back to your workshops. Tell me how the workshops have been going for you. You've been doing these around DC, and you're going to take them to New York next?
Yes. So I've done 3 in DC so far. I feel like I'm on the working space tour, because since so far I've had each of my workshops at a different co-working space. And in fact, my next workshop is going to be on June first at 12 o'clock at Impact Hub New York City. So for any listeners out there that are in New York or going to be in New York, you're more than welcome to come. And if you follow Shifting Patterns Consulting either on Facebook or Twitter, you'll find out the details of that workshop, and you can go ahead and sign up for free. So the workshops are really an opportunity for changemaker leaders to come together and to be able to meet each other. And as part of that process, it's kind of interesting, there actually are some spontaneous sort of collaborations that emerge from the workshops, which is really fantastic. And so the workshop is really an opportunity for them to learn more about what are some of the challenges that changemaker leaders face when they go to collaborate. And as I mentioned before, these are challenges that tend to be around purpose. They tend to be around who needs to be part of the collaboration effort, as well as how do we get people to step up and participate, as well as sustain their participation over time. And so as part of the workshop, I introduce a 4-step methodology that's intended to help them collaborate more effectively. And then we actually do an exercise that focuses on the first step of that particular methodology. And then at the end, I actually provide an offer for people to continue to stay involved with the work that Shifting Patterns Consulting is doing, and they actually have an opportunity to continue to learn more, sign up for more information, as well as obtain a free consultation if they're seriously interested in getting help with their collaboration.
That's really awesome, Kimberly, and I have to publicly apologize to Kimberly. I keep having stuff that comes up and can't make it to her workshop, so I'm going to do my best to try to do that going forward. I think it's an amazing idea, because I think part of the issue that we've talked about even on this program before is really knowing how to talk about what it is that we do, and sometimes going through the collaborative process can help people really understand that a lot more. I do know that when I've got clients that I take through a design team process and they actually see how we break into teams and we come back and talk with each other, a lot of people are like, wow, I never thought that could be done. So just giving that opportunity, I think, has been good. Kimberly, what has been your most aha moment for you in doing your workshops so far?
That's an excellent question. I would say my biggest aha moment in doing these workshops is, I think, just being better at actually delivering the workshops. So for me, it's about learning how to let go of the outcome. And so, in fact, I've been working with a coach to help me out with the workshops. And so her motto is imperfect action, and it's something that I love and I've also taken on board as well. And so it's this whole idea of just kind of rolling with it. I do have a background in improv as well, so I think that helps me a lot to kind of just roll with it and see what happens and see what emerges. And I think the fact that people have really enjoyed the workshops, they've actively participated in them, and the fact that they stay after the workshop has ended to continue talking with each other and to explore opportunities to collaborate with each other has been really phenomenal. So for me, that's been really eye-opening to see that the people that come to these workshops are actually excited about the topic and actually practice their interest in collaborating better.
And you know what, Kimberly, that may be something, the next time you and I grab lunch, let's talk about how to maybe take those workshops and help you by hosting a Nexus gathering, a Nexus for Change gathering in the area, where people can dig more into collaborative methods in general. And that might be something that I just actually had that aha moment as you were talking right now. So
that sounds great. I would love that.
So we'll definitely talk about that. Now, Ryan, tell me, so you guys are doing this strategic planning process. Is this going to be the 10 of you at the leadership team just driving home a strategy, or what? How are you guys getting that done? And then tell me some things that we can expect to see from the Global Engagement Network over the next couple of months.
Sure. Thank you, Jeremy. So in the past couple months working with you guys, we've seen our volunteer team grow as far as the people who are really involved to develop Gen and take us into the future. We've seen that team double in just a couple months. So our engagement through these planning stages, it's providing us with a more stable environment for volunteers. It's providing us with best allocating responsibilities and getting those involved. The future is looking bright. I expect Jen to, and this might be a little bias coming from someone involved, but I expect Jen to really change the game as far as media and presenting unbiased and fair news for, but be a part of. Exciting to be a member of this team and to be on the very ground floor of something like this. And it's the perfect climate for it with everything going on in the country and the world right now.
Well, I'm just really excited for you guys. John and I really like finding organizations that we can work to support that really do have the ability to take collaboration to the next level and to really look at how things have been working for you guys. You really are starting to function as a team. It's really interesting, Kimberly, to watch these guys. They're actually functioning sometimes better than a couple of our corporate clients do, I think. And I think part of that has to do with the idea that, you know, it's not a job per se. But I think it's just really neat to see that grow. And I know, Kimberly, you and I have talked about that even in the work that we do, just to watch those organizations start to process and facilitate their own meetings in a way that's collaborative can really be a game changer. And so, listen, John, I'm running out of time here. Do I have any questions from the chat area? I just checked Twitter and didn't see anything.
No, Jeremy. People have been in and out, so but nothing yet.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So we've got some people coming on. Listen, this Coffee with Jeremy is an opportunity for you to also ask questions and collaborate with us as well. And so we usually try to do these between 2 and 4 Eastern on every Wednesday. So please do share that with your friends, www.coffeewithjeremy.tv. Kimberly, give us your 1 minute. What would you love people to take away from today's conversation and where they can find more information about the great work you're doing with your clients?
Sure. What I'd love people to take away from this conversation is that collaboration is ultimately about relationships. And in fact, the quality of our relationships determines the quality of the results that we get through collaboration. And Ryan, I love the comment that you made at the beginning of this whole idea of, in terms of democracy, and that people have a responsibility to not only be a consumer of content, but also be a producer of it. And I believe that very firmly as well. And so I feel like democracy is not a spectator sport. We all have to actively participate in whatever way makes most sense for us. And so at Shifting Patterns, what we do is we also post out blogs on the work that we're doing, as well as the different issues that we're working on. And so as part of that too, in terms of having that social aspect or that social impact, I personally also get involved in different volunteer activities and issues that I believe in. And if you want to learn more about Shifting Patterns and the work that Shifting Patterns is doing, certainly check out our website at shifting-patterns.com, as well as check us out on Twitter at ShiftPatConsult, and also on Facebook. Thanks, Jeremy, for having me today. It was a pleasure being on your show again.
I love having you on, Kimberly, and we really I'm back in late June, so let's make sure that we circle back for a lunch. I love just sitting down with Kimberly and other consultants like you, where we can just talk and really get into some of the day-to-day things that we're dealing with in our client situations as well. Ryan, quick plug for Jen, and what do you want people to take out of today's conversation, even kind of thinking about the process that you guys have went through? So what are you hoping people take out of today's conversation, and give us a little bit more on where we can find stuff about the Global Engagement Network?
Sure, and thank you, Jeremy, for having me with you guys and take away people to go at collaboration and here, what are we is the best to take to get going. It's pretty much changed the rate of how we're seeing some big ideas actually come. I'm going to see more. Bernie 26 and Revolution. And if you are interested in volunteering, email us at volunteer.
Excellent. Listen, I think I've got a bandwidth issue happening here, so I'm hoping you guys can still hear me. Let's go ahead and wrap up for the day. Again, a big thanks to Ryan and to Kimberly for being on. A big thanks to John for working things in the background. Remember, you should check us out at coffeewithjeremy.tv. Share it with your friends. Let them know that we have these conversations every Wednesday. Next week, we're going to be featuring some of our other client work, and we hope you join us then. And again, you can find more information about the consulting that we do at SMG Endeavors at sgendeavors.com, and stuff about SGE Media Group at sgemediagroup.com. So a big thanks to everybody. Thank you for joining, and we hope to see you next week. This concludes Coffee with Jeremy. Thanks a lot.